Hey guys, thank you for coming out. I have some quick announcements to make. Please look at your insert. Two big announcements. One is annual meeting is coming up, February 6th. So in almost exactly a month and a few days, immediately following the service. So please do attend. We have a lot of things to discuss this year. Obviously we have some parish committee people here, so you know. It's a big deal, so please do try to come to that service and to the meeting afterwards. Eileen is not here. She gave me an update. We are still on, as of now, for the winter trip. I think she said there was like one room left. So if you really want to come, this would be the time to call. Because right now we're doing pretty well booking up, but it'd be great if we filled it, because then we don't have to deal with anyone else, which is always nice. And I think that's it for announcements. Tara, you'll see, is not here. She is still down in Maryland. Laura had another procedure this week, so she's taking care of things down there. So obviously we send her our best thoughts and wishes and prayers today. As far as the service is concerned, this is Epiphany Sunday. This is the only actual service we're having during Christmas this year. You know this because we say it ad nauseum. Christmas starts on the 25th and it goes all the way through the 5th or 6th, depending on how you do your math. And Epiphany is the 6th. This is the Sunday closest, so we're doing it now. Hence the cool getup. I get to wear it one more time. And today is really part of a two-part, which often happens this time of year, a two-part series, because we're welcoming in the new year as well. Next week will be more New Year. This week is all about the journey, because every year, of course, we talk about the wise men or the mages or whatever you want to call them during this service, and we reflect on the journey that we have gone through ourselves since we had another Epiphany Sunday. So let's do that now with a moment of silence to think about our journey through 2021, which was, as you may recall, quite an event. Please join in the recitation of our covenant written in your order of service. In the love of truth and in the spirit of Jesus, we unite for the worship of God and the service of all. And our first reading today is the always predictable Epiphany Sunday reading, the Journey of the Wise Men from Matthew. And I will again say we're not actually sure whether they were men. We hope they were wise. We don't know if there were three of them. And they were definitely not kings. So, it's something a little weird. I'm going to use all those terms, plus a few more probably before we're done. So just, you know what we're talking about. Here they say astrologers. After Jesus' birth, which happened in Bethlehem of Judea during the reign of Herod, astrologers from the east arrived in Jerusalem and asked, "Where is the newborn ruler of the Jews? We observed his star at its rising and have come to pay homage." At this news, Herod became greatly disturbed, as did all of Jerusalem. Summoning all the chief priests and religious scholars of the people, he asked them where the Messiah was to be born. "In Bethlehem of Judea," they informed him. "Here is what the prophet has written. And you, Bethlehem, land of Judah, are by no means least among the leaders of Judah, since from you will come a ruler who is to shepherd my people Israel." Herod called the astrologers aside and found out from them the exact time of the star's appearance. Then he sent them to Bethlehem after having instructed them, "Go and get detailed information about the child. When you have found him, report back to me so that I may go and offer homage to him." After their audience with the ruler, they set out. The star which they had observed at its rising went ahead of them until it came to a standstill over the place where the child lay. They were overjoyed at seeing the star, and upon entering the house found the child with Mary, his mother. They prostrated themselves and paid homage. Then they opened their coffers and presented the child with gifts of gold, frankincense, and myrrh. They were warned in a dream not to return to Herod, so they went back to their own country by another route. I know it's not quite as exciting as the pageant version. Thank you, Rich, and others, for that font, but it works. It still works. So our next reading is by Susan R. Andrews, who's actually Reverend Dr. Susan Andrews, who is a presbyter in the Presbyterian Church USA, which is roughly equivalent to being a bishop. And so, let's just see what she says. She says, "Wise men. In order truly to follow the star, the wise men had to move beyond reason to intuition. They had to move beyond science to faith, trusting the journey even though they did not know where they were going, trusting a wisdom beyond their own to take them where they needed to go. Yes, the wisdom of the wise men was a wandering kind of wisdom that ended up in worship, in their offering homage to the wider and more wonderful wisdom of God. In these postmodern times, many within the younger generations are moving away from the rationalism of their parents and grandparents. Through incense and meditation and experience and beauty, they are seeking mystery and embracing wonder. Rather than doctrine, they seek delight. Rather than ideas, they explore imagination. Rather than rationality, they yearn for relationship. Like the Magi, they are willing to take risks and explore the unknown in order to find the holy. Ask and keep on asking. Seek and keep on seeking. Find and keep on finding. Their faith is a Jesus faith, a journey faith. And like the wise men, their intellectual curiosity and spiritual hunger give them courage to leave behind all that is familiar. Now please join in our responsive reading, number 658. I'll tell you now in case I forget, we finally got it right this year with carols. We'll be singing from the red hymnal. So certainly reading from the great one. To laugh is to risk appearing the fool. To reach out for another is to risk exposing our true self. To love is to risk not being loved in return. To try is to risk failure. Let us now take a moment in silence to pray for those in need of our prayers today, and to once again consider where we have been and where we are going. Now, as Jesus taught us, let us pray. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen. Now it is time for the offering, a free gift to a free church. bring many gifts. Together build one church community. Just these quick words, again, from Reverend Andrews. Ask and keep on asking. Seek and keep on seeking. Find and keep on finding. Their faith is a Jesus faith, a journey faith. And like the wise men, their intellectual curiosity and spiritual hunger give them courage to leave behind all that is familiar. After Jesus' birth, the Bible tells us, astrologers from the east arrived in Jerusalem. After Jesus' birth, astrologers from the east arrived in Jerusalem. Now you know this story in all its permutations. It's in the pageant, and then we read it every single year on this Sunday. It gets a lot of coverage. But I have to tell you, this is not the easiest service to prepare every year. And it's not the fault of the mages or the wise men or the astrologers or whatever they are. It's mostly because of what goes on around this service. This service always happens in the midst of the receding echoes of the busiest of holiday seasons. Over the past week, we have traveled around, some of us. We have visited loved ones, or at least we tried to. And now, many of us are faced with the inertia that comes from having a bit too much of everything. Too much food, too much wine for some folks, too much togetherness, too much of a gap between moments of normality in our lives. And now, while we prepare for the children to go back to school tomorrow, a moment that can be both anticipated and dreaded, depending on how long the week was and how it went for people, we can also feel like we have had not enough of all those things. Also, since this is Epiphany Sunday, and Epiphany Sunday lines up with the new year, we have been overwhelmed with processing 2021, or at least I have been. We aren't quite ready on the 2nd of January to come to terms with all of that. In fact, next week, according to the version of me that planned out the preaching schedule in August, next week, not this week, we will be giving some thought to the year gone by and what we might have learned during that time. But right now is Epiphany Sunday, which is enough for today. And it is customary on this day to close out Christmas by giving some thought to that journey of those astrologers. Giving some thought about what they found after they pushed their way out of the old world with its comfortable and comforting ways into something new and strange. Now, I think we can set aside for a moment whether the last year actually was comfortable and comforting. I'm not entirely sure. In many ways, in fact, we have been in the midst of massive transitions, for good or for ill, and peace has been hard to find. But you know, the astrologers were familiar with this kind of world too. After all, They are the ones who had to hide both Jesus and themselves from the powers represented by King Herod. And in following that star, they exhibited some important character traits for people who move through times like ours. Not peaceful times, but chaotic times. Times when change is already upon us. Now, there's a certain curiosity and openness in these travelers. There is a sense of realignment as well, of taking on the old guard, even as the old guard doubles down on its resistance to change. And if we go all the way back to that last Sunday in November, the first Sunday of Advent, you can also see hope in this story from Matthew. There is a hope inside of them, a hope that the world we are building doesn't have to repeat the mistakes of the past or the mistakes of the present. Now, it's easy to think of ourselves in the position of these travelers. It should be easy because we are supposed to. Along with the shepherds, they are the stand-ins for the normal, everyday people in this story, going about their days and being surprised by the journey that they are on anyway. Which is another reason why we take the time to think about this story every year. This story is our story. The road goes ever on with its branches and tributaries before us, and we travel along this road all our lives. Now, as we travel through this world, there are journeys that are thrust upon us, aren't there? And there are journeys we choose to take. But either way, obstacles appear in our path. Whether there is some version of those choirs of angels appearing in our lives to compel us, like the shepherd experience, or if we are having that sense of curiosity and adventure and faith to believe that the guiding star is there in the sky waiting to lead us. Today, Epiphany Sunday, looking back from where we came and forward into whatever comes next, we can be forgiven, I think, for focusing a bit on those obstacles in our lives. For having found the trail to be not as easy as we had wished. Just like that confused, wandering journey in the wilderness that we read about today. The message of this story is that these obstacles can be overcome. And as we have talked about before, they're overcome in a certain way. The ancients have a bit of an advantage over us moderns. An advantage that we can still find ways to access. You see, the big character trait for our travelers, the thing that got the astrologers or wise men or whatever through this moment, that big trait comes from something that can be hard for us initially, from something that can bog us down in our journeys if we let it. And our reading by the Presbyterian minister Susan Andrews gets to this point. She tells us that they, the wise men, in her words, had to move beyond reason to intuition. They had to move beyond science to faith, trusting the journey, she says, even though they did not know where they were going, trusting a wisdom beyond their own to take them to where they needed to go. Now, it can be hard for people like us to turn off that rational mind that we value so highly, and to let ourselves wander like the astrologers did. We are trained, after all, to travel the same trails every time we think a thought or leave the house, to make the same choices. And in many situations, there are good reasons for that. Now, If we went skiing or hiking this week, for example, I know some people did, we probably spent time marking off our route, making sure we approached it correctly, with the gear and the attitude that experience and education tells us we need to be safe. But there are other venues in our lives where this rule does not hold, where we have followed the same, perhaps more metaphorical path for way too long, where we have let our habits stunt our creativity, and now having followed the trail to this point in the beginning of the new year with some pretty tough traveling behind us and possibly pretty tough traveling in front of us, we may need to cut a new trail. We may need to follow those younger generations that Andrews describes into an intuitive faith. We may need to trust each other, to trust the wisdom of God, in her words, to follow a new star in a new direction. This is true for the suffering planet and for society, and it can be true for each and every one of us in our own lives. This is the time when we usually make changes, this Epiphany Sunday at the beginning of the new year. It's an easy marker for considering what we were and what we are becoming. It's a moment to plot this new path with new resolutions, new behaviors and decisions, to take the risks of love, hope, and life that we heard in our responsive reading today, that can get on into a better life for us all. So now it is time for communion, an intuitive and spiritual act that we do together to commit to the journey, our own journey, and to commit to aiding each other as we follow whatever path awaits us. So let's take yet another moment of silence to consider our journeys, both together and apart. Blessed be. Now please turn to your communion insert. It is, I don't know what that color is. I'm slightly colorblind. We're going to say blue? It's a blue? Okay. It's a sort of a Miami Dolphins blue. Let's look at that. Don't think too hard about the Dolphins. Let us come together to celebrate the story of Jesus, to connect to that story and to each other through the sharing of bread and wine. These simple things have been through the ages a sign of unity, a source of strength, and a witness to the power of sacrificial love. Let us now join together in silence for our private prayers of confession. Now let us join in the responsive prayer. Your steadfast love, O God, extends to the heavens, your faithfulness to the clouds.
Your righteousness is like the mountains, your judgments are like the great deep. You save humans and animals alike like God.
How precious is your steadfast love, O God! All people may take refuge in the shadow of your wings.
They feast on the abundance of your house.
For with you is the fountain of life. In your light we see light.
Will continue your steadfast love to those who know you.
Do not let the foot of the arrogant tread on me. When the hour had come, Jesus took a place at the table with the apostles. And Jesus said to them, I have longed to eat this Passover with you before I suffer. I tell you, I will not eat it again until everything is fulfilled in the reign of God. Then taking a cup of wine, Jesus gave thanks and said, Take this and share it among you. I tell you, I will not drink wine from now on until the reign of God comes.
Then he took a loaf of bread, and when he had given thanks, he broke it, and he gave it to them, saying, This is my body, which is given for you. Do this in remembrance of me. Eat this bread in remembrance of Jesus. And he did the same with the cup after supper, saying, This cup that is poured out for you is the new covenant in my blood. Drink this wine in remembrance of Jesus and those who have been near and dear to us.
While we were doing that, I was mindful that last year we had communion. There were 4 of us, I think, 5, and it was so cold that we couldn't close the second door. So it's nice to be here. Whatsoever things are true, whatsoever things are honorable, whatsoever things are just, whatsoever things are pure, whatsoever things are lovely, whatsoever things are of good report, if there be any virtue, and if there be any praise, think on those things. Philippians chapter 4. Now please join in our final hymn, in your red hymnal, We Three Kings, number 143. Please rise. Help us to be the always hopeful gardeners of the Spirit, who know that without darkness nothing comes to birth, and without light nothing flowers. Amen, and blessed be.